Okay, so what I'm going to go over with you today is an exercise just to really get you doing some problem solving and also being playful in your sketchbook. So we are going to play with color mixing, and I'm going to show you the supplies that I have and then tell you some options that you have for yours. So I am using watercolor paints. I'm doing this in my sketchbook, which has like mixed media paper in it, so it is a little more heavy duty and can withhold the watercolor paints. You need some paper towels for painting, a bowl of water. I've decided I'm just using one paintbrush for the whole thing. And then I also love, this is called deli paper, which is really like what they use if you go to the grocery store and get like lunch meat or cheese or anything like that. It's kind of like wax paper, but lighter weight and comes in just like really nice sheets. And so I love it. I use it a lot for mono prints, but I also use it as a palette to mix paints. So you can use watercolor paint if you want to as well. You can also do this with acrylic paint or tempera paint and do it in a sketchbook or kind of whatever surface seems fun and playful to you. I'm gonna move this over so we're looking at my blank page now. And what you're going to challenge yourself to do is mix 100 different colors, which might sound kind of crazy, but it's really, really fun and you definitely can do it. Now, I've decided I can use all of the colors in my watercolor palette, which I'm going to let you make up your own rules for this. Or you might limit yourself to just primary colors plus black and white. Or you might just pick 5 colors and that's what you're going to limit yourself to. That's totally up to you. A couple things that you want to get out of this is one, just sitting down and making some marks and working in your sketchbook, and also just being willing to experiment and explore. So finding colors that you can make and being playful with your paints. So I'm gonna just turn my color mixing around here so I have a little bit more room, and I'm gonna go ahead and go to town. So I've decided the first way that I wanna play with mixing is I'm gonna just start by layering colors right on top of each other. So instead of mixing it first, I'm gonna kind of mix it right on the page and see if I like what that does. And the thing is, if you don't like what it does, it's totally fine because this is an experiment. And I'm just kind of going down my watercolor palette right now. I like this where I'm letting it go over the edge a little bit so I can see both colors. So I'm thinking that's kind of fun to look at. So that might be an idea of something that I play with in an actual work of art at some point. I'm thinking about how my colors, kind of letting us see the colors overlapping. So there you can see those two didn't actually, I mean, they mixed some, you can tell it's darker, but that didn't really mix. That wasn't actually that interesting. So now I'm gonna go ahead and switch and do some mixing on my deli paper. So I'm gonna get myself some nice pile of red paint there, and then start to mix into that. So I have this really beautiful purple that I'm gonna go ahead and put down. And now what I'm gonna do is continue to go back into the same area and add some more red. So this is the same idea that you would do if you were doing like a monochromatic painting, so a painting that's all one color but different shades and tones, that you would keep adding back into the same mixture because it's gonna kind of guarantee you're gonna get a similar color, but slightly different. So there I have lots of different options. You can see I'm washing my brush after each one because I don't want to get my tray really dirty. So now I'm still mixing into that same spot, but now I went ahead and I brought some orange into it. And I'm gonna do another pool of orange into this color. And I'm gonna keep working in this similar fashion of just adding another color to the same mix for a while and kind of be playful with how I like that. Now another thing that I could experiment with if I wanted to is while my paints are still wet, actually doing some overlapping and doing more of a gradient. So I'm seeing them bleed into each other. I'm seeing how I like that mixture to take place. I can play with that up here. Kind of how do they interact? How do I get that to fade? How do I control that? Because this is really about exploring your paints and what can you get them to do. So even though you know, I'm just using one brush for this because I do want the main focus to be about mixing colors. You could also, if you wanted to, maybe you got some new paint brushes and you want to play with how they work. You could also go ahead and experiment with some different brushes and see how they interact with each other. I can even like continue this sort of trail down. Maybe I'll grab some green and just play with the idea of continuing to pull my watercolor paints into each other while they're wet. I'm seeing what kind of stream I can create with that, which is sort of interesting. Then I'm gonna go back and grab some more of my red and put this color with the red yet. Overlap those, and I'm gonna pull that into here, which we're gonna see is gonna start to take me into a little bit of a kind of neutral brown world, which is fine. So that's actually, I can see it's a really beautiful gray that I just made. And my cat suddenly thinks that she needs to visit us. So some other things that I might play with is looking at, once these are dry, these aren't totally dry, but they are pretty dry, is if I want to, what happens if I actually now go over top of these colors once they're pretty dry. So it's going to change how they interact with each other. And do I like how that looks? I think that's kind of nice. I'm going to go ahead and just put a nice solid black. So I can also play with how saturated can I get something. So there I really picked up a lot of black on my brush. Then I could also play with, while that's still wet, just taking my wet brush and pulling that down. And I'm just gonna keep pulling it right down over top of this other one and see what I can make happen over there. And maybe I'll do one more experiment where I'm gonna just make my paper nice and wet first, and I'm gonna play with mixing a little bit maybe right on my paper. So you can see the paint responds differently. So this is called wet on wet. Responds differently when the paper's already wet versus when it's dry. And seeing if I like that or if I don't like that. So that's a big part of the point of experimenting in your sketchbook, and why it's really called experimenting, is seeing what do you like and what don't you like. So I don't have 100 colors yet. but I have a whole bunch of colors happening here, so I can see what kind of color combinations I'm really liking. I can think about techniques that I like, so ones that I like when they overlap versus ones I don't like when they overlap, some kind of letting colors bleed into each other, this where I had them all fade, and really think about things that I did that I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. I really love how that looked, or oh my gosh, that was terrible. I would be really upset if I actually did that on a final painting. So allowing yourself to just sit down and color. A couple of things that you can do. So you could be taking notes and labeling as you go through this if you want to. Beforehand, if you want to be really exact, you could draw out a grid system of boxes that you're going to fill in and make it much more nice and neat and organized than mine is. That's not how I like to work. Or you could also, if you don't want to, sit there and keep on counting and you're kind of prone to that, you could also use a timer. So you could also do something like set a timer for 15 minutes or set a timer for 30 minutes and just go ahead and go to town and mix colors until your timer goes off. Any of those are just a great exercise in getting into your sketchbook and getting yourself making. This is also a really great exercise if you're having trouble. So if you're feeling like you have creative block, like you have no ideas and you can't really get yourself going, it can be really great just to sit down and start making some marks in your sketchbook.